Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody in the world of Facebook and living and loving wholeheartedly? I hope that everyone is having a really, really fabulous week thus far, and that whatever is happening, that you've got the wholeheartedness to deal with it. If not, then hopefully, this conversation we're going to have this evening is going to be one of those tools that allows you to deal with everything coming your way in a bit more systematic and a bit more mental hygiene kind of way. I hope I'm live. If there is someone that is live on here with me, please let me know. I am only on one device. I've been evicted from my normal spot, so I am makeshifting it here in my son's room. So I'm on my phone. I see there's someone with me. Hello. Welcome. So what are we chatting about this evening? I must be honest with you. I'm chatting about priorities, but I can't promise that the conversation will stay here. We might meander all over the show, and even insofar as it affects priorities, I might just go all over the show because it is actually quite a chunky conversation, and I really welcome you to bring your thoughts, your ideas into the conversation because, our perspectives, our life experiences really allow us to contribute to this conversation in a very dynamic and a very meaningful kind of way. On the off chance that you are in this group and we've not yet met, I'm Safia. I'm the Chief Shifter at New Habits, and it really is one of my big life goals, my big life ambitions, to help professionals to cultivate careers that they can really thrive in, that they can create for themselves a really, really sustainable lifestyle, one that makes a difference in their own lives, one that makes a difference in the lives of the people that they love and care about, and in their broader community. I think our careers play a really pivotal part of who we are and how we impact the world around us. And if we can enjoy our careers, if we can go to work every day feeling like I'm going to a place where I'm going to do something that matters and makes a difference, then we can go there and really impact the people that we work with and impact the people that we support through our work. Hi Lydia, how's it going? They say lightning doesn't strike twice, but here we are striking twice today. So for those of you who don't know her yet, you really, really must check out Lydia. Lydia is the Disability Mojo. She's a coach that serves a really, really, really important community, and she's got such a unique perspective, a unique background to that environment, that if you are a manager who is managing persons with disabilities, if you have or know or are, you've got someone in your life that is a person with disabilities and they're feeling stuck, Lydia is your go-to person. She is the Disability Mojo. You can find her online as a Disability Mojo, and of course you can find her here. So priorities are just such a big thing, and I think this is such a cool conversation right now. For me, for instance, and I know for a lot of the people that I interact with on a regular basis, 2022 is looming large. It is here on our doorsteps. We are starting to talk about our breaks. We are starting to talk about what we're going to do for next year, and we're starting to dream and to fantasize. And I think that there is an energy and there's a hunger for dreaming and for fantasizing and for creating something new, because we've been in a very stuck, lethargic kind of state generally. I'm not saying that everyone is completely stuck for the last 22, 24 months, but in parts of us, we've been stuck, we've been reined back, we've been held back. Lydia, how else must I launch you? You are just like totally mojo, man. We are completely stuck, and we've been completely stuck, and I think that there is this energy of wanting to be unleashed that is lying ahead of us. I actually don't know of anyone that I'm interacting with that doesn't have that sense of we're going to make things happen come 2022. The truth is that we don't actually have to wait for 2022. It's just a date. It is just a moment in time. 2022, the 1st of January, is as now is now. When we get there, it will just be now, and this moment will be past. So for the rest of this year, everything that you are thinking about, you can already start ticking it off. I want to share with you a few thoughts around priorities because of this time of year, and just because of what happens in us when we don't have clarity of our priorities. Now, I know that for all of us, having great intentions is easy. Following through on those intentions, staying the course, staying grounded in that path, showing up to those intentions each and every single day can be really and truly challenging. When we have this idea, when we have this intention, there is like an energy that rises in us, and very often that is a beautiful high. And when we are going down the path of creating what we wanted to create, we can't really sustain that high. And as that high passes, our wherewithal, our willpower to return to our intention, to our priorities, start to decline. And it is for this reason that we have to become really tactical and really strategic about our priorities. Now, the first question, of course, is, do we know what our priorities are? And one of the things that I experience very often, both for myself, for my kids, for the people that I work with, for the people that I interact with, is we kind of know what is exhausting us. We kind of know what is annoying us. We kind of know what is frustrating us. But we don't necessarily know what our priorities are. And if we know what our priorities are, we don't necessarily, I just need to put do not disturb thingy on here because it's going a bit berserk. Hold on, please. There we go. So when we don't know what our priorities are, we get sucked in by things that is just random things that consume our time, consumes our energy, it consumes our resources. Hi there, Mulemo, how's it? And Janine, how are you doing? Welcome. So what is so important is that we really, really, really start to understand that if we don't have clarity about what our priorities are, our destiny becomes all those things that grab our attention in spite of the fact that it adds no value to our lives. So there's a number of ways in which this happens. We don't know what our priorities are, and so we get caught up in other people's priorities. Secondly, we don't know what our priorities are, and so we waste our time away. We vegetate our time away. We just wait out time, and we deploy resources, and we create, but it doesn't go into a pattern. I was having a conversation with someone 2 weeks ago who is an incredibly busy person, investing a hell of a lot in creating a new, they're doing renovations in the home and whatever. And the funny thing is that in spite of the fact that they're busy with renovations, the renovations are happening haphazardly. There is no grand plan. And, my logical mind is really struggling with this because there's a truckload of money going into it, but there is no plan. It's kind of, I like this for the kitchen, I like this for that, I like that for that, I like that for that. And things are just happening haphazardly. So in the same way, our energy gets expended haphazardly and we don't really know what we're busy creating with it. So if this is true for you and you don't know what your priorities are at the moment, there are 3 questions that you want to be asking yourself. And these 3 questions are questions that help you to locate what you want. It doesn't only help you to locate what you want in the short term, it helps you to locate what you want in the long term. It is very, very hard to claim your boundaries. It is very hard to claim your priorities. It is very hard to claim your space in relation to other people if you do not know what your priorities are. So if it takes you time to think through these 3 questions, then do that. Invest in that time. Don't think of it as something that is a chore or a bore. think of it as one of the biggest investments that you can make with your time and with your energy. I also just want to share with you that these are not the only 3 questions, and hopefully as you have this conversation with yourself and you have, you contemplate these questions, other questions will come up for you, and you will be able to really, really create a refined idea of how you want to be deploying your time, how you want to be deploying your energy, and how you want to be deploying your resources. The first question for me is, or that I offer you to explore, is, what are the experiences you want? Not what job do you want, how much you want to earn, and all these kinds of things. What are the experiences? What is the quality of life that you want to experience? What is the lifestyle that you want to experience? Very often when we get caught up in the questions around what is the job that I want, what is this specific thing that I want, or that specific thing, that other specific thing that I want, we miss the big picture. And very often the big picture is actually more available to us than we can imagine when we are preoccupied with the small, minute details. So for instance, you might want to have the experience of traveling frequently, and you might be saying to yourself, I need to have X amount of money to be able to travel frequently. When in fact, money is only one of the ways in which you can create travel for yourself, right? So if you know what it is that you want, then you can start becoming creative in many different ways about how to create what you want. But think through, what are the experiences you want? And don't only think through about the whims of the world out there. What are the things that really, really excites you? So if you think through the times in your life when you've been the most excited, the most animated, what are those things? Because the clues are there for you. So what are the experiences you want to create? And, are these things that you want to create just because you've seen other people do it, or are these the things that really, really turn you on as you go through your days, your weeks, and your months? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, who must you become in order to be the person that lives those experiences? So again, each and every single one of us walk through life with a particular energy, a particular way of being, a particular way of showing up. And if you're showing up with an energy of I can't, then your ability to create, let's say, the experience of travel in your life might be deeply compromised. So for instance, travel might be available to you in a way that is unexpected. You might have to be, let's say, for instance, I have a friend who's been traveling for the past, previously for about 10, 15 years of her life, and she traveled on cruise ships working as part of the crew. And she was actually a dancer on the crew. It's very exciting. But let's say, for instance, you can be a crew member, and working hard isn't part, you've got a resistance to working hard on a cruise ship or in any context, then maybe that's an I can't attitude, or an I can't energy that takes an opportunity off the table for you. So the question then is, who must you become to be able to take advantage of the things that come your way? Now, I want to share with you a very real experience. A couple of years ago, I told my husband, for instance, that I want to travel. At that moment in time, we had both just started our own businesses, and we didn't want to be spending money on something like travel. And for me, my intention really and truly was, I want to travel, and these are the countries in Africa that I want to see, and I want to end the year off in Mauritius. My husband says to me, "You're crazy, stop talking nonsense, blah, blah, blah," and all those kinds of things. And the very next thing that happens for me is I get a call from a coaching company that had secured some work with one of the big banks. They needed to deliver the work across Africa. And guess where I went? I went to the countries I wanted to go to. And where did I end December up? Where did I end up in December? in Mauritius. So I really think that there is great value in becoming really, really clear about what you want, and remaining open to the ways in which you're going to experience what you want to experience. And who you must be is not necessarily a one and done conversation with yourself. Who you must be is a conversation that you have to have with yourself in the context of all the experiences and all the opportunities that are coming your way. You know, if, for instance, I had said on that occasion, oh, I'm not equipped to do this training, because I wasn't equipped to do the training. I had to go through quite a learning curve to do the training, to deliver the training. You know, then that would have taken the thing off the table for me. All I was very, very clear on, I'll do what it takes to get to travel to these places. And I'm ever grateful for having done it, because it has really, really expanded my horizons and it's given me a new understanding of the world I live in and the people that I interact with. So if you know what you want in life, becoming clear on who you must be to be able to seize what you want in life, you have to start working through the upper limits in your mind to make sure that you can receive what is absolutely waiting for you on the other side of your wish. I think the third question that you have to ask yourself, and this is a really important question for most of us, is how do I contribute to the world around me in a way that is meaningful for me, that allows me to be who I want to become, so that I can experience what I want to experience? This is a very, very big question in terms of priorities. Very often we have these incredibly philanthropic approach to how we want to contribute to the people around us. And we end up becoming the victim of how we prioritize and how we contribute, because we're constantly giving in a way that is creating resistance between us and the experience we want to have. It's creating a barrier between us and the way in which we want to show up in life. We really have to become clear about what are the ways in which I'm going to contribute, how am I going to make a difference, and more importantly, what can people not count on me for? What can people not expect from me? What can people not ask me for? And how can I comfortably say no to those people when they're asking me, because that is not part of how I've prioritized how I'm going to contribute in my mind, right? So that is just in relation to understanding how you create your priorities. And these three questions can really lead you to a beautiful conversation with yourself that allows you to claim your time, to claim your energy, to create what is important for you. If you do have big goals ahead of you, knowing what you want and knowing who you must be and knowing what you will not do and how you will not contribute becomes really, really important. Now, I'm speaking as if when we are claiming our priority, or when we are practicing our priorities, that it's always happening in relation to other people. Now, of course, many of our priorities happen in relation to other people. We've got to know what we want, and we've got to know what our boundaries are, so that when other people make requests of us, we can manage those requests to make sure that these requests are either managed or delegated in a way that doesn't take us away from our priorities. If you're a leader, if you are a leader and you are not becoming really clear on what your leadership priorities are, you're going to end up taking your team down a notch. One of the big experiences that I have witnessed over and over and over, one of the big experiences that I've experienced over and over and over, is where I don't have clarity on what my responsibilities are in the job that I'm in. And so as a leader, you get promoted into your leadership role from the job that you've been in. You've got incredible comfort. You know exactly what to do in the job you've been in. And so you keep going back down and working at the level that you've just come from. And in that process, you take everyone down with you, lower than where they are supposed to be. if you're a leader, one of the most important things that you can do at the moment is to diarize for yourself the things that are your priorities as a leader. These are things that you have to put first in advance of all the emergencies that come up. Salam Rashid, is that you? You've got to put those things in place. You've got to put those things in place in advance of all the things that are going to crop up. You've got to put your priorities in your diary in advance of all the things that typically tends to steal your time from your stakeholders, from your customers, from everyone. Because if you don't attend to your priorities, guess what? You end up on a hamster wheel and you can't progress. And as a leader, your role is to make sure that everyone moves in a particular direction and that stagnation is not the order of the day. At the end of the day, that's the job of priority, whether you're in the capacity of a leader or whether this is just in your own life. Our jobs as leaders, our jobs as the leaders in our own lives is to make sure that we are moving forward to our vision, to our goals, to the things that we want to create in our lives. So it's easier to manage the requests from other people. It's easier to have boundaries if you've got clarity on what, on what is important to you. If you have clarity on what is important to you, and if you've put in your diary, if you've scheduled what is important to you, if you've planned for what is important to you, then it becomes a lot easier to manage your boundaries, to manage the requests from other people. What's Lydia saying? These 3 questions are so important throughout our careers in life, so we avoid living a life of regrets. Yeah. We can step fully into our power only if we have these conversations with ourselves continuously to prevent us from drifting off into an abyss. Absolutely. And I think it's so important that you use the word confusion, because that is literally the state that most people find themselves in when they're experiencing overwhelm. It's that they just don't know where to go to, because there's no clear path. And, people say that they must work on their boundaries, but very often it's hard for them to work on their boundaries because they don't have clarity about what the priorities are. And this is such a big conversation, and it's very hard to contain this conversation in one small space in such a short time, because when you're talking about priorities, you've got to understand, what are your values? What is your vision? What is the goals that you have? What is the short-term, medium-term, long-term goals? What are the tribe kind of connections that you want to create? What are the things that you absolutely will not stand for? What is your brand value in your work environment, in your business environment, in your social, in your family environment? You've got to know, for instance, just so many things. Like for me, for instance, in my life, I have to really think hard and critically about sugar. I keep talking about my sugar stuff. This week, sugar has been on my mind, because when I don't launch into my mind a priority around what I'm going to eat and what I'm not going to eat, then guess what? My eating just happens, and then I have regret. And it's quite a uncomfortable feeling to sit with if it's something that comes up over and over and over. And that just leads me to another thing around priorities. We cannot set our priorities once in a while and then expect that they're going to remain front and center. We have to have rituals and practices in our lives that allow these priorities to return to us, to be lodged into our conscious minds over and over and over until it becomes part of our modus operandi when we eventually achieve the outcome or the vision that we're pursuing. And I just want to go back to what I said earlier on. It's very easy to show up to our goals, to our intentions, and to our priorities in the beginning. On day one, everyone can show up to the intentions. I know that there are people that actually don't show up to the intentions as early as day one, but Can you show up to your intentions on day 2, on day 3, on day 45, on day 120? And essentially who you are on day 1 is almost irrelevant. It is who you are on day 120 or day 45 that actually makes the difference, that actually allows us to make sure that we are really and truly sticking with our priorities, and that we are really and truly following through on the things that matter and make a difference in our lives. I think one of the things that we underestimate the most is how we don't prioritize in relation to ourselves. Now, I spoke about my sugar thing early on, and I know for a fact that if I don't think deliberately about food on a daily basis, food happens to me, I don't happen to food. The same is for everyone else in a million different capacities. What are the priorities that you've got in your life, in all the different parts of your life? What are the priorities you've got in your financial life? What are the priorities you've got in your romantic life? What are the priorities you've got in your family life? Every part of your life, you've got to know what are the priorities, because if you don't know what the priorities are, it becomes really, really hard to make choices, to make decisions, to know when to show up for something and to know when to walk away from something. This is really, really important. How we show up for ourselves is really how we show up in relation to other people is really just a reflection of how we prioritize ourselves in our lives, in our intentions, and in our vision for ourselves. And if we don't take the time, if we don't expend the energy, if we don't invest in creating clarity on what our priorities are and planning for our priorities will just essentially evaporate. And we will at some point in time say, the world's not fair, people are demanding this, that, all these different things, when in truth, we really are not taking ownership of our priorities. I spoke earlier in the day to Lydia, in fact, and we spoke about how when we claim our sovereign power, we really take all the excuses off the table. And one of the ways in which we claim sovereign power is through knowing with absolute certainty what our priorities are, what our priorities are for our money, what our priorities are for just our time, every resource we've got to know what our priorities are. I do want to say that, and this has certainly been my experience, the moment we launch a priority in our lives, the moment we launch an intention, the moment we say we are serious about something, there's the next thing that happens. And the thing that typically happens is that we hit an upper limit of sorts, a fear of sorts kind of emerges inside of us. And it is really, really critical that we understand what these fears are, and we understand how these fears are deploying our thoughts in ways that is not productive, how these fears are deploying our feelings, our emotions in ways that are not useful, how these fears are impacting the choices we make and how we interact with other human beings and the things we do that doesn't help us to keep front and center our priorities and our intentions. Now, my experience has been the following. I set a priority and I think about all the things that can go wrong. And I become preoccupied with the things that can go wrong. I become preoccupied with who is going to make demands on my time, who's going to make demands on my resources, financial resources, all these different kinds of resources. And the moment we focus on what can go wrong, guess what happens? Things go wrong. It's almost as if you're placing an order to the universe, and you're saying, I don't want things to go wrong. And the more you say, I don't want things to go wrong, say, oh, something wrong? Then they give you, they deliver something wrong to you. Then you say, no, I don't want something to go wrong. Oh, you want something to go wrong? And they give you another order of something to go wrong until they're quite backed up on things to go wrong for you. What is important when we prioritize is that we really become clear on speaking, thinking, feeling, emoting the things that we want to create. Yes, somebody could potentially make requests of us. And if we become preoccupied with the potential of that person making requests of us, we're not solving the problem for maintaining our priorities. For us to maintain our priorities, we've got to become really clear on deploying our thoughts, on deploying our emotional states, on deploying our resources in a way that allows us to maintain our priority. Now, I understand that, for instance, if we are employed, our boss makes a demand of us, and we can't necessarily just say no. How do we creatively manage that request so we don't forfeit our priority? Or if we have to forfeit our priority in the short term, how do we manage that so that we don't lose sight of the priority on the long term? And how do we make sure that we make up for that loss of priority in the short term? It is really, really important that when we are thinking about our priorities, that our thoughts are not driven by our fears. It's important that our thoughts are driven by our hopes, by the vision we have, by the dream we have, by the thing that we want to accomplish. To get our hopes, to give our hopes any chance, we have to be thinking our hopes to life, our intentions to life. We cannot allow fear to come in. Fear of what people are going to ask of us, fear of what people are going to think of us, fear of what people are going to expect of us. We cannot allow these things to strip us of our ability to prioritize our priorities and to become the living embodiment of our intentions. Whatever we intend to accomplish, whatever we want to create, the absolute requirement is that we become the version of ourselves that does not capitulate to life's stresses, that does not capitulate to life's fears, that we become the version of us that can stay with our intention in spite of all the challenges and all the detractors in the world out there. Now, it is really, really critical that we become clear every single day about what our priorities are. We can have a big picture of our vision and we can prioritize our vision. It is just really, really critical that every single day we bring front and center that version or that piece or that milestone in relation to our big picture so that we can become the living embodiment for that day of what it takes to create what we want to create in the long term. Rituals and practices is the way to our vision. Rituals and practices is a way to our vision. Rituals and practices is the way to staying the distance, staying the course, and remaining true to our priorities. In the absence of rituals and practices, what will happen is that all the things that grab our attention from that fear perspective will grab our attention. It'll be like hooks, like Velcro that just gets stuck onto it and just pulls us in the direction away from our priorities. So the invitation I have is sit with those 3 questions in a micro way every single day. Don't allow life's stresses to take away from, or life's demands or people's demands to take away from the answers to those 3 questions. Those 3 questions, if you allow them to guide you on a regular basis, on a daily basis, your brain, your mind, your heart, your soul, your community will help you to fulfill those hopes, those dreams, those intentions, that vision, if you prioritize. Now, one of the things that I'm really passionate about, I'm deeply, deeply passionate about it. In fact, I've got more little books in my world than is normal for anyone, because I'm passionate about writing our thoughts into reality, writing our hopes, writing our dreams into reality, not our bad thoughts. I believe that if we can just spend a few minutes every single day just with what matters to us, we really and truly can create the momentum that is needed for us to make our priorities our priorities. If we don't make our priorities, all those destructive compulsions will run the course with us. We will end up numbing out in front of Netflix. We will shop to our heart's content. No jibes there. Eh? We will become distracted by those compulsions that keep us feeling soothed all the time. So for some people, it's eating. For other people, it's doing things that just adds no value. And somewhere in the back of our minds, we know that this isn't adding value. This is probably not a good use of our time, but we'll return to it because we've lost sight of our priorities. It is also just, and I didn't mention this earlier on, but it's really important if you answer these three questions. If you answer these three questions, what you're really going to get is a sense of a deeper level of motivation. Because if you answer the three questions, what are the experiences I really and truly want? Not the experiences that the world says I must have, the ones that really juice me up, then you're going to have the motivation. You might not have the constant motivation, and you might not have the motivation in the moment when things are getting really bad, but you have sufficient motivation over time to keep returning to the priority, to the intention, and to what is important. So it is really, really important that we have these conversations with us at a macro level and on a micro level. It is critical that we do this all the time. Hey, Naima. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on priorities. Do you have any thoughts on priorities? I just really think it's important for us to prioritize our hopes and our dreams and not our fears. And the observation that I have of my own life, my own experience, as well as the people that I interact with, is that we don't always have that kind of clarity. And when we don't have that clarity, anxiety and overwhelm becomes a thing. Confusion is a very definite thing. And I also just think that we have to remember that the way our brain is designed, our brain is not designed for our happiness, for our joy, and for our fulfillment. Our brains are designed to keep us alive, however it perceives and has codified alive. And when you have an intention that it has not yet witnessed you fulfill, or if you have an intention that looks like more work than something easier, your brain is going to find ways to distract you from that intention. And one of the ways it does that is to keep you busy, and keeps you busy doing things that is really not useful. And so if we can know what our priorities are, anchor our priorities in our rituals, our daily rituals, in our thoughts on a regular basis, then we can start really claiming them, and we can then start practicing boundary management with other people in a way that matters. Every single time I have worked with someone around boundaries, the one thing that has always been present has been an absence of priorities, an absence of clarity, an absence of knowing where you're going. And so we can boundary manage because the emotional impact of boundary violations is high. But we can do that until we're blue in our face. Until we know what our priorities are, it's really not going to matter. So that's my story. Lydia is saying it's important for me to have clarity on what my intention is, of what I desire to stay the course. Yeah. I want to add, Lydia, if I might, that clarity in and of itself requires that we return to our priorities on a regular basis. So clarity is a funny one because we don't necessarily have clarity. We have clarity of the big vision out there, and then we might have clarity of the next step, but we don't have clarity of the steps in between. And so there's like a clarity confusion dance that we do with ourselves. And the moment we lose sight of our priorities, that clarity confusion dance becomes an overwhelm dance, because we've got clarity for the next step, but then we don't know what the step is after that. And because we don't know what the step is after that, we then just become, quite catatonic, and we decide that maybe that is just too much. we feel overwhelmed and we feel confused, and then we just become inert. One of the big things is the moment you take the first step on your priority list, it literally paves the way to more confusion, to the next level of confusion. And then we sit with that confusion and we return to our priorities and we take the next step. And then there's clarity. And then we take the next step. And so there's always this pattern of confusion and clarity, confusion and clarity. The only time that we lose clarity permanently is if we stop taking action. And the only cure to confusion is action. And you can only really consistently take action if you are prioritizing it. So yeah, it is important to have clarity. So that's my story, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for spending time with me. If you have any thoughts to share, any questions to ask, please don't hesitate. Yeah. By the way, I am hosting a free program called Passage to Bliss, 6, 7, 8, and 9 December for 1 hour each evening. If you or anyone you know could benefit from it, please do come and join. Please share it with your community. Oh, cool, Lydia, you're welcome. Please share or come and join. Passage to Bliss is really about coming to clarity and understanding how we interrupt our ability to own our bliss. Bliss is available to each and every single one of us. Life is not ever going to be one where, we're all farting rainbows and daisies, and nothing goes wrong in life. We have the ability to learn to live and to be with our bliss on an ongoing basis, even in hardship. And the program that I'm going to be sharing between 6 and 9 December is really about how we can manage our mindsets so that we can make bliss available to ourselves, regardless of what is happening in our lives. So I'll add the link into the post with the video. Please share it. I'm quite excited about it. I'm calling it a masterclass. I haven't had a masterclass before, so I'm quite excited about that. So yeah, so thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for hanging out. I know your evenings are supposed to be chill and downtime, and yeah, I'm talking about priorities and managing your mind and asking yourself complicated questions. So thank you for spending this time with me, and I'm going to see you next week sometime. Bye.